Good evening, everybody. Tonight I will be presenting my analysis of communication strategies employed during the record global temperature crisis of early 2024. This unprecedented climate event presented a complex communication challenge that tested our collective ability to convey scientific information, maintain public engagement, and drive appropriate responses. Throughout this presentation, I'll share how different stakeholders approach this communication challenge and offer insights for improving climate crisis messaging as we move forward. Let me introduce three key elements of our discussion tonight. First, this presentation examines communication strategies used during the 2024 temperature crisis, which represented a mega crisis spanning multiple sectors and societies. Second, I'll highlight the background context that made this crisis uniquely challenging to communicate. Finally, I'll apply crisis communication frameworks, particularly Combs' situational crisis communication theory, to evaluate how different communicators frame these events and their consequences. Together, these elements will help us identify effective strategies for future climate communication challenges. To understand the communication challenges involved, we need to appreciate the unprecedented nature and scope of the temperature crisis itself. January marked the 8th consecutive month of record temperatures, with February showing anomalies exceeding 5 degrees Celsius across 3 continents. The human toll included thousands of heat-related deaths, particularly in regions with insufficient infrastructure. Arctic temperatures rose 7 degrees Celsius above historical averages, accelerating permafrost melt. Agricultural production plummeted, energy grids failed, and the International Monetary Fund estimated direct economic losses at $240 billion. This complexity fundamentally shaped communication challenges, requiring explanations of both immediate events and longer patterns. Different stakeholders frame temperature records with varying approaches and effectiveness. Scientific organizations primarily use informational framing, presenting data in historical context but often lacking emotional resonance. Governmental agencies showed the most variation, adopting security or economic frames depending on their focus. Environmental organizations employed moral and emotional frames, highlighting impacts through vivid imagery and personal narratives. Most effective were integrated approaches, connecting global patterns to local impacts and scientific data to lived experiences, demonstrating higher audience comprehension and response intention. A significant challenge in climate crisis communication involves sustaining public attention without triggering disengagement. The extended duration of the temperature anomalies throughout early 2024 created what communication scholars described as a chronic crisis condition, where traditional crisis messaging approaches became less effective over time. Organizations that framed each temperature record as part of an unfolding story maintained substantially higher engagement metrics. Effective coordination of messaging across different stakeholder groups proved crucial but challenging during this crisis. Let me highlight 6 key coordination elements that emerged from our analysis. Narrative coherence through clear hierarchies of messaging, private sector alignment with scientific communications, anticipatory planning processes, strategic coordination across communicator types, uncertainty management approaches, and integrated framing connecting global to local impacts. Organizations that establish collaborative frameworks maintain consistent core messaging while allowing audience-specific adaptations. This coordination framework offers valuable lessons for future mega crises requiring multi-stakeholder responses. While temperature records contain minimal uncertainty, attributing them to climate change and projecting future impacts involved varying degrees of uncertainty requiring careful communication. Scientific organizations use sophisticated approaches in technical contexts, but struggled translating for general audiences. The most effective strategies differentiated between types of uncertainty: measurement, attribution, and projection, communicating each appropriately. Media analysis showed that proactive uncertainty communication resulted in more accurate coverage, while failure to address uncertainty dimensions led to inappropriate doubt in media reports. A crucial challenge involved connecting immediate events to longer climate narratives without losing audience engagement. Effective communications integrated multiple framing dimensions while using visual tools to establish temporal connections. Interactive graphics allowed exploration of temperature trends across timeframes proved especially effective. IPCC research found that communications connecting current records to longer trends generated 37% higher concern and 42% stronger policy support compared to isolated presentations. The most successful approaches created coherent narratives, placing immediate events within broader climate context while maintaining engagement through varied formats. 6 key findings emerged from my analysis. First, crisis communication frameworks required adaptation for distributed responsibility in climate contexts. Second, integrated framing approaches connecting informational, security, and moral dimensions proved most effective. Third, maintaining engagement required narrative progression rather than repetition. Fourth, coordinating messages across stakeholders demanded clear narrative hierarchies. Fifth, transparent uncertainty communication enhanced rather than undermined credibility. Lastly, temporal bridging connecting immediate events with longer climate patterns significantly increased comprehension and response intention. Based on these findings, I offer 5 practical recommendations. First, establish comprehensive pre-crisis planning with ongoing process development rather than static plans. Second, adopt audience-centered approaches addressing specific informational needs and psychological responses. Third, implement strategic uncertainty management, differentiating between uncertainty types while maintaining clear core statements. Fourth, foster coordinated messaging through collaborative frameworks, maintaining consistent content while allowing audience-specific adaptations. And lastly, emphasize temporal integration, connecting immediate events to longer trends through visual tools and narrative structures. These visual examples illustrate successful application of my recommendations. The integrated framing case connects global temperature data to local impacts like drought and wildfires. The layered communication example demonstrates coordinated messaging across national, international, and community organizations. The bridging narratives case illustrates temporal integration, linking immediate records to long-term trends. Finally, the visualizing uncertainty example shows how different uncertainty types can be clearly differentiated and explained. These examples provide templates adaptable for diverse communication contexts. Effective crisis communication remains essential for driving proper responses to the ongoing climate crisis. Success will ultimately determine how societies comprehend climate disruptions and develop appropriate strategies as conditions evolve over time. By applying the lessons identified, integrated framing, narrative progression, message coordination, uncertainty management, and temporal bridging, communicators can enhance public understanding and mobilize more effective responses. The 2024 temperature crisis tested our communicative capacity, providing valuable insights for strengthening our collective response to this defining challenging of our time. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I hope it is through this presentation that you can now see the climate crisis through a new lens. Take care and have a good night, everybody.